Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast where we use storytelling and expert interviews to widen the lens on what it means to be a happy and healthy endurance athlete. We believe that athletes are so much more than their body, sport, and training miles. I'm Dr. Kate Mihevik-Edwards.
And I'm Dr. Casey Sinders. We are endurance athletes, physical therapists, and huge coffee addicts. We spend most of our time treating, educating, and working with endurance athletes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Now let's get to the show.
Today, we actually have two guests on the podcast, which is a very first for us at More Than Miles. And we're very, very excited. We have Grainnie Donnelly and Emma Brockwell. I was actually first introduced to them, I think it was about a year and a half ago. My timeline's not perfect, but right when Blair and I put out the book, Go Ahead, Stop and Pee, you guys did something incredible and you put out the first return to running guidelines for postpartum athletes.
And it's mad to think that that was so long ago. It was so fitting. I remember when your book came out and I was sent a proof of it. And I was like, it was so lovely to read because it was like we were people who had never met before. We were singing from the same song sheet. So it was just actually really like, yay.
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my God, they wrote what we wrote. I can't believe we were right.
Yeah, isn't it funny how there was almost this movement, wasn't there? I think Grainne and I started talking around 2018, maybe, about it. All of a sudden, this snowball just became bigger and bigger and bigger, which is awesome because it's really exciting when you, first of all, realise you're not the only ones interested in the subject area, but also that it's happening around the world, just not in the UK, because it's quite easy to feel you're just on your own in your own little silos, but turns out we're not. And you guys are on the same song sheet as well, which is great.
I know. And it's true. You do get kind of stuck in this area. I mean, we were like, wow, is anybody else thinking like we're thinking? And then just to see that, it was really, really incredible. And I know now it's all over the world, but yeah, it was a really cool time. It has been quite the challenge to get us on the same page because of the time zone. You would think that we had it down knowing that it was 5 hours, but we showed up at different times another week. And then this week, the Zoom link wouldn't work. And
and then we had to figure out whether we're spelling mom the American way or the English way or the Irish way when we were trying to get Emma's email address. And isn't it mad that we've got the one language really, but there's so many variations. So in Ireland, just for everyone out there, we say mammy, which is M-A-M-M-Y. And that's totally different to what everybody else says.
Well, yeah. And we were saying in the South, you say mama. In the North, you say mom. And then you were saying mum.
Yeah, we're mum in London or in the UK, or sorry, in England, should I say, we are mum or mummy. It's a varied word. And what a problem it's created for us this afternoon, quite frankly. Quite ridiculous that 4 intelligent women have taken 20 minutes to organise a Zoom call that was meant to happen last week as well. So go figure. We're obviously spending too much time worrying about running and the perinatal population. So we can't be everything, right?
That's right. Good thing we're good at what we do. And this is just, we're figuring this part out. So one of the things that Casey and I love to do in the beginning of the podcast is kind of talk about everybody's running story. So how did you even get involved in running? What's your running journey been like so that we kind of get that background? So I don't know who wants to start, Grainnie or Emma, but why don't you go ahead and tell us?
You go, Emma.
Okay, I'll go. So I guess I'm 42 now. So I started running actually when I was about 18, when how dare a boy break up with me. And
how dare he?
How dare he? Thank goodness
he didn't know
what
he was missing.
Oh, thank God he did. Yeah, a huge favour. He broke up with me and I was devastated and was studying and really just discovered my love of running through probably a way of managing my mental health, just getting out, exploring the big outdoors. I'm not a massive fan of the gym, although I see the huge benefits it brings. So I think I entered myself into the London Marathon, and that's really where my journey began. And it hasn't ever stopped. It's had its moments where I pressed pause because of falling pregnant. I had a horrible 2 pregnancies. As wonderful as it was to be pregnant, I wasn't very well with my pregnancies. unable to run, and my return to running postnatal journeys were really difficult. Hence, I guess, my passion and interest for this particular topic. And there's a personal drive there. And that's where I am now. I still love running. I don't run as much as I want to because we're all busy mums and life is crazily busy, but I couldn't be without it. And so for those women I meet who don't necessarily run, I try and encourage them to run just because I feel it brings so much to my life. But that's it, really. I'm not an elite runner. I'm never going to be the next Paula Radcliffe, but that's okay. I just enjoy it. I love it.
So my story is a little bit different. I always was a runner as a child. And actually, when I'm really young, I can remember my mum would have entered all the local running competitions and we would have all come along and been cheering her along just as a recreational runner. And then as a child so I was brought up and I would have then competed in track and cross country at school. And I loved it. I was actually quite good at that stage of my life. And then I got into university school. I probably stopped running so much. Pregnancy, I didn't run as much, but postpartum, I wanted to get back into it. So it became that passion of how do we do this and how do we do it safely? And I wanted to kind of reestablish and refine myself as a runner. And mostly because of the population of women that I was at this stage treating, a lot of women were struggling to get back or were having symptoms. So my big struggle and what it continues to be is why are we not giving the perinatal population the same focus and attention that we give to sports people? Because pelvic health is just an area or a subcategory of musculoskeletal and sports medicine. We just have to, it's just focused on an area. And I was actually speaking to someone this morning about the fact that, you know, someone can have a sports injury and a microscopic knee surgery and get 8 months guaranteed rehabilitation, whereas women go and have babies and it's back to porridge on Monday and just get on with it. So I was just trying to, that's the big passion and driver, to put focus on this area and get some proper guidance for women.
Oh my gosh, it's so lacking. And that's why Blair and I had written that book, because we found that we in the healthcare fields had no idea what to do after we had children. And so we dove into the literature, finding not a whole lot out there. And then we started studying as well. And we're like, there has got to be something better. We can't just let, 51% of the population, and then however many of those women decide to have children, just pick right up after they have a major surgery or a major event in their life that took a year of their life. Like, how can we, I don't know, how can you go from, growing a human for an entire year, having all of these physiological changes happening, giving birth and then being expected to be who you were a year ago? It's just not truth.
Absolutely.
It's entirely bonkers. And it's kind of funny as well that women, for a large part of time, have kind of accepted that we do have a baby and we do just try and get back on with things. And that's what's always so fascinating to me, is when women come and see me, they'll have seen their GP often, who generally offer an awesome service, but they don't have much time with their new mums. In fact, most of the attention is on baby. And of course, a lot of the women I see will ask the GP, can I go back to exercise now? And either they're surprised that they're being asked that question as the GP, or they're just thinking, well, yeah, I kind of guess you can. And it's funny that perhaps women have questioned it more than I give them credit for, but I do think we accept that we're a mum, we should just move on with the next stage of our life. And I think women are getting better at asking for more and more help, but I wish more and more women wouldn't accept that as an okay answer, because it's not an okay answer. We still, in our little world, in our little bubble, that feels that it's happening. And then lo and behold, next day in clinic, I hear someone that's returned to running or returned to high impact way too soon. And you just think, oh my goodness, why hasn't there been more help offered to you? Or perhaps why haven't you reached out for more help? Because it's out there. We just don't seem to be exploring the options or being signposted to people like ourselves who can deliver that sort of service.
I love hearing how you guys got interested into this, because I'm on that very early stages of this, like when you guys first realized that this is a problem, right? So, because I'm 29, I don't have kids, don't have any plan to have kids in the near future, but I have lots of friends who are currently pregnant, getting back to running after being pregnant. I've obviously seen a lot of patients come through the clinic with similar issues that you guys are talking about. And it's really inspired me to try to learn more, because My lack of interest in pregnancy and women's health is well documented on this podcast because my passions lie a little bit more in the elite and performance, which they're all together. They all tie together, right? But when you don't have any friends who are pregnant and you aren't pregnant, you just don't understand how difficult it is. And particularly here in the United States, I think our women's healthcare system is a little bit lacking. And the care for what we call like maybe that fourth trimester is really a problem, I think. Because, we think about like if someone has an injury and we say, okay, rest, ice it, and then, go on with your life, like obviously there's going to be some issues. And I think there's some same things that happen with pregnancy, and it's an injury that needs to be cared for. And it's not seen that way.
Yeah, I love that. And what I think is really, really fitting with that is that if we consider even a textbook delivery or someone who went in, had quite a straightforward, really positive experience, comes out, we still need to consider those women and their rehab needs, because no matter how active someone is during pregnancy, even if they exercise right up towards delivery, they're still going to experience some degree of deconditioning because they'll be moving differently. They'll not be exerting themselves as much. And like if we think of any other sport, so go for the sports and performance world, if anyone has a period of like off season, they're going to decondition to some degree. And then there's pre-season training, which is killer because it's trying to get back up again. And I think that we need to be thinking about women and the perinatal population as an endurance event in some sort of way. And there's a recovery phase for it afterwards.
I absolutely love thinking of it as this is, hey, now you're postpartum and here we are, you're in your training phase. And this is right before you actually get to train for a race. This is your pre-training phase. I think it's a great way to think of it. And the return to running guidelines you guys wrote and some of the things that we wrote in our book, it actually lays it out pretty well. So I would love for you guys to talk through some of that just for people who haven't seen your return to running guidelines.
I'll let you take that, Grainne, because you explain it really succinctly, although I'm happy to.
We'll both chip in. Well, I think that we did a bit of a scoping review. And the funny thing is that we were, I suppose, targeting these returning to running guidelines for medical and health professionals and fitness professionals. So it was very much the professionals dealing with women. But because there's such an empty space out there, we were finding it was all the women who were, because we put them out free to access, all the women themselves wanted to know this information. They actually wanted to read the evidence-informed information and getting into the physiology and changes of what's happening. So we then started sending it out to the general public. But basically, we highlighted what happens during pregnancy and delivery in terms of the abdominal wall and pelvic floor. So those changes so that we can understand and appreciate why there's a need for recovery, even before we consider childbirth. And then we outlined the importance of a pelvic health review. And we also talked about graded exercise progression. And we outlined some key load and impact tests that are a good idea to try out in order to see if you might be ready for that return to run progression. Again, the science behind these is still in need of more research because we don't know if these specific tests are the go-to ones, but they were the best of what we could extrapolate from the research. And so far, they're proven beneficial. Women like doing them. And to be honest, if they do them symptom-free, it's a real confidence booster. But Emma, I'll let you talk about the other aspects of it, the other considerations and different things that we wrote.
Yeah, so I mean, we really wanted to highlight within the guidelines that pelvic health was essential to be considered and then managed if it was an issue. And I think for a lot of women, they hear about pelvic floor issues like stress urinary incontinence occurring after having a baby, and they often accept that as part of the norm. I think that's quite a traditional perception after having a baby. Oh, well, my granny always could never get on the trampoline after having a baby. That's just as a result of having a baby, and just we have to live with it and accept it. Well, no, absolutely couldn't be further from the truth. And what we really wanted to do and to highlight within the guidelines that pelvic floor dysfunction is just like any other injury. It might not be painful unless, of course, you're suffering with pelvic pain, but it is another injury. And we really wanted to highlight that not just to women, but also to medical, healthcare, fitness professionals. Screen for this, because this is a key dysfunction you're missing that could, especially with your more elite athletes, could really affect their performance as well. We don't know that for fact, but I think there's some good indications that that could be the case. And so I think one of the biggest driving forces behind the guidelines was trying to amalgamate the world of sport and the world of pelvic health and, mix it all up, because as Grainne said a gazillion billion times, why on earth are we thinking that pelvic health sits over here and sports MSK sits over here? It should never have been the case. And what I think has been really exciting over the past, I'd say more sort of year, 18 months, is that finally these two worlds are coming together. I hope that's going to become more appealing to clinicians who perhaps aren't quite as interested in the pregnant population or the postnatal population. We're just another injured population who love exercising, who should be exercising, and who need support from us all. So it's about normalising, but also just saying it's just another stage in a woman's life that we really need to respect. And by doing so, we're going to really encourage women to stay active, which is going to mean their family stays more active, because there's evidence out there that shows you have a strong, active mum, you're more likely to have a strong, active family. So that's a pretty cool selling point, I'd say. And I hope that's what the guidelines really have gone on to push forwards, is that message. Not that I'm passionate about them at all.
You don't sound passionate at all. I don't think. I really wish you'd get excited about it.
I know. But this is where I think we got, in a way, lucky as well. Social media has done so much for the perinatal population, and we've seen it grow and grow and grow, but women are incredible, and they will spread the right messages. And I see a really supportive network on social media that's done huge things for the guidelines, but there was obviously a huge hunger for them. And I hope eventually that falls into the menopausal population. I hope it falls into the younger female athletes as well, because that's just essential. This is just a little piece of the cake, but I feel that there's more pieces to come. So it's exciting.
I think there are a lot more pieces to come. I teach an online course, and we talk about everything from menstrual cycle, timing your menstrual cycle, to your training, to the pregnancy, the postpartum, then the menopause, and how your hormones impact it, and all of that. And I think that, yes, right now it's all so new in quotations, but at least we're now getting it out there, which is really exciting.
We had infographics with the original document we put out, and there's been such a hunger for people who, like physical therapists throughout the world, who've been like, if I write the translations of this, can we get that infographic in our language? I'm like, yes, because we want dissemination, and so funny enough, the most recent one that's just been done is Italian that we've to put out. And I think that's massive. And that's one of the things that has really helped, because we need to, even on an international level, the care in America should be similar to the care in the UK, which should be similar to the care in Europe. Instead of having all these different systems with different approaches, if the evidence, whatever the evidence is saying, should be the care that people are accessing. If only it was that simple.
If only it was that simple.
If only.
One of the things I like to say to my athletes who really are not interested in the pelvic floor, but obviously we need to look at it or think about it, whether they're pregnant, postpartum, or have never had a baby, is that, look, your pelvic floor actually impacts your hip, impacts your back, impacts every other part of your body. It's just another part of the system that's all knit together and integrated. And I think that that's something that people don't realize because it's been siloed for so long.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's been so siloed. Sorry, Emma, I keep cutting you. But just on that point, I'm going to say that. And I was wondering what Casey would think about this, because you're really into the sports and performance and MSK. And one of the things we noticed recently, particularly within UK sports medicine training, is that when they're going on courses for, say, the hip and pelvis or hip and groin, they've got all the muscles of the area, all the key muscles, including going up the back, but they're missing this pelvic floor. It's just omitted from like an anatomical drawings. And I'm just like, how is that not even in there? When some of the pelvic floor is involved in hip rotation, we've got muscles like obturator and turnus. And I'm just like, you can't just omit a muscle that's relevant.
You can, because that's what they've been doing.
Does that happen in America? Is that the same? Is this just a UK thing, or?
No, it's the same case here. And so I do want to back up and defend myself a little bit. I just wanted to be vulnerable and understanding of people who didn't see this connection, right? Because I started my PT education with someone who's a complete expert in this, Kate, right? And it's taken me until starting this podcast, maybe a little bit before, to really understand and grasp how this works in my practice and how I can help people with this, because it isn't really my language, because it is in that silo and we don't get taught that silo in school. So it's really on the physical therapist once they graduate to take the con ed, to find the mentors and to learn how they're integrated, because it's just not taught in school. I've been intimidated on how to learn about it. It's not my language. I really hate saying the word Kegel. It was very difficult for me to learn how to speak. I know from my perspective, a lot of times I'm talking to an athlete with the same perspective, like, I don't know, pelvic floor. It's not in any of my anatomy books. Like, who knows? Like, it's this very esoteric concept that you need to learn how to frame it and educate it properly to make someone buy in. They don't have that educational background. They don't know about it. So you're basically teaching them this whole like new thing. And so I think that's where the disconnect is because we have it in a silo. And so it's very difficult to integrate. So it's been a process of learning how to do that and how to work with my patients with that.
That's really difficult. But I also think when you think about, male physios, male coaches, it can be really difficult to bring that subject up as well. And I think you're right, Casey, this isn't mocking those missing parts of the jigsaw puzzle. Certainly, I can assure you, when I trained as a musculoskeletal physiotherapist, pelvic health wasn't on my radar at all. And, I'm in a privileged position now to be able to say it is on my radar, but that's because I had problems and I decided to figure out how and why to sort that out by specializing in pelvic health. But I think you're right. I think we need to find ways of making it a more normal language, if you like, or less intimidating language, so that all women, all men feel really comfortable talking about this area any more than looking at a foot. That frightens me an awful lot more, looking at a vulva, to be honest with you. I really don't like feet at all. But, even for men as well, with their men's pelvic health as well, that's really, really important that we're addressing everyone's pelvic health, not just women's. And I think that has to come more in our undergraduate educational system, because all of us are relying on our postgrad systems to enlighten us. And that creates these big pockets, these big silos, which for completion, to ensure that all men and women are treated as a whole, we all need to be learning about that much sooner on in our careers. At least that's my opinion anyway.
I think so too. And I know that Emory, where both Casey and I went to school, they do electives. So you can opt in your last year of PT school, but you have to opt in and you have to know that it's important. If it's an elective, it also takes away some of the importance, I think, because you can choose to learn about this part of your body or not. So I definitely think there's an underlying issue in the systems, the medical training systems, but then also after we graduate, if you've never been introduced to it, you don't know you're missing it. That's huge. A lot of the people that have never even talked about it or heard about it just don't even know that it's an issue.
My experience, fun fact, was that as a basic grade, I wanted to be the next sports physio. So that was why I went into physio in the first place. And I remember in the UK, we get sent round rotations in our whatever hospital we get a job in. And I had done orthopedics, I had done respiratory wards, and then the next thing I was being sent to the maternity hospital, and I remember trying to swap out of it. I remember actually everyone laughed that I got the short straw. Nearly, it was seen like as a waste of 6 months. It seemed like, it's going to be a long haul. And I went probably reluctant to go. And then when I got there, that was my introduction to pelvic health. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. And I was like, why do people not want to do this? And it was really, really taboo. Like, we talk about things being a taboo subject, but back then when I went into this, it was like the majority of the population coming into the clinic were perimenopausal. There was the odd younger person, and I remember how vulnerable they seemed coming in. And I hadn't had kids yet. I wasn't married yet. It was just, so pelvic health in some elements, I didn't have experience of exposure to some things, but I remember being like, they shouldn't feel vulnerable or out of place in this clinic. And it is just MSK, but for a different reason. So I remember that was me. I had decided I wanted to go into pelvic health, and that was my journey. But if I hadn't have been sent on a rotation, which I had no choice in, I would have never chosen to opt in. And so I'd never know.
Incredible.
Thank God you did.
Yeah, I think the world is glad you did. Talk about the universe.
Yeah, but I think that's where Grainne's really. I don't say this just because we're here talking to her, but that's where she, I think, has been quite pivotal in the past year or so, causing this collision, as her BJSM blog is titled, of the sporting world and the pelvic health world, because it takes guts to say, right, guys, hang on a minute, we're all in our own silos, and I think we need to amalgamate the two. And, you know, you've been really vocal and also really key at pushing the research behind that as well. In the past 18 months, maybe a year, I don't think you've stopped researching this subject, because, you know, I obviously helped co-author the guidelines, but really the past year, Grainne has just become some sort of researching demon and created.
Somebody stop her quick.
What a title. Oh my gosh.
Research demon.
But you have, because I think the papers that you've written with Izzy and you know, we've got others coming out, which I get confused. I can't, and me, but less so. But I don't even know what I can and can't say at the moment. I've got so confused. This is what I mean. She's written so many that I can't actually list them all because I can't remember them. But I think that your contribution to this is probably underestimated. And as I say, I mean, I'm bound to say it a little because you're my friend. But I'm grateful that you went on that elective, because I question whether that collision of worlds would have happened just yet if it hadn't have been for you. So. Yay.
Oh, thank you, Emma.
Yay.
Thank you for your support, because none of this would have happened without you. And I always think behind everything, we all of us on any journey we have, like I look at you and Casey here today, and it's a team. Like nothing happens by one person. It happens by a collective, or it takes your village of people with common thoughts, common causes, got the mission to go, because nobody goes out and steps into exposure on their own. It's a very vulnerable space. So, and it's finding like-minded people across the world. Like that time when we spoke to you in Blair, it was like, oh my goodness, they're on the same level. Like they know. Like it was just lovely. And it was so ironic that we had done things to the same time scale, like literally independent, didn't know you were doing it until it was like, oh, you have this out. Well, we've got this that's about to be published. And we were like, wow. So I love connecting and meeting like-minded people. And I love the movement. When you step back and you look at what everybody's doing collectively, I love the movement that's happening. How nice to be part of that.
It's incredible. It's a lot of fun, and there's so much more to learn. So why don't you tell us what you have been working on?
Well, we have been working hard, haven't we, Emma? We have we've got a couple of papers coming out in the special edition of the Journal of Women's Health Physical Therapy, actually. So that's out in January. Oh, awesome. And they've been accepted, but they're not being released until the print's being released. So we've got a nice paper that's basically a clinical commentary that is discussing whole systems factors for returning to running. So everybody, yes, the musculoskeletal and the tissue healing and pelvic floor and abdominal wall is really important. And we mentioned a little bit about that, but we wanted to move wider than that and talk about all the factors that sometimes get lost along the way with this population. So similar to sports, we have to think, how much sleep that mom getting? Is she entering an energy deficit? So is there any relative energy deficiency in sports is the term that goes along with that. But like, is she eating on the go and not replenishing her own battery and then trying to go running, which is going to drain it further? Is she, how's her psychological well-being and how's she coping? So we really wanted to give kudos to that and even give clinicians and fitness professionals working in this population like a bit of an example of how to do a risk-benefit analysis, because really no two women are the same. There's no one time scale that's going to be like everybody's ready to run at X weeks postpartum. It depends on each individual, and it's how, as a clinician, do you clinically reason, because that's one of the things in clinical practice I probably came across is that as physiotherapists, I think that we like to have protocols and we like to have set in stone guidance and just do that at this set timescale. And it can be very easy to fall out of using
all that knowledge and skills you developed at undergrad and postgrad to actually clinically reason what you're working with in front of you, and you make the decision. And so it was kind of breaking it down to give people that opportunity. So that's one of the things. But you had mentioned before we got on air, Emma, in the last year, amongst all this sort of stuff, amongst the guidelines and amongst all the papers we've been doing, managed to publish a book on basically the manual that every woman needed forever in their life.
Why did no one tell me, right? Is that how to protect, heal, and nurture your body through motherhood?
You have said it perfectly.
Oh, thank you. I was so blown away because I looked and I thought, how did Emma have time to write this book?
How did Emma have time to write this book? By nearly killing herself, I think.
Long hours and the cause.
It's just, I think we're all a bit insane when it comes to this topic. And I don't think you can do things like that unless you're passionate about something. We all go above and beyond. And I just got very lucky. I got offered an opportunity to write the book, and kind of the timing kind of fitted. And then something happened called COVID. Which was really bad timing, where all of a sudden I was trying to homeschool my two children. My husband was here, which was great, but different. I'm not used to having my husband at home all the time, but actually he was amazing. He really massively helped me homeschool them. And thankfully I have friends like Grainne to help, read the book, proofread it, listen to my tears as I nearly have a bit of an emotional breakdown about writing it. But I wrote it because I was so fed up with hearing that phrase, why did no one tell me? And you know what? Why is no one telling women that these changes can happen and these changes are okay, and then we can manage them? And it's a real book to signpost you to the likes of us. It has some of the answers, but with all of these things, I think a real individual assessment and approach is needed. But if nothing else, I hope it gives women a little bit of reassurance that, yes, if you're leaking urine after having a baby or during pregnancy, I'm sorry, but we can hopefully help you with that, and don't just put up with it. So yeah, I hope it's a little Bible for the perinatal population. And I'm not sure how I feel ever about writing another book again. I think I'm still traumatized by it at the moment. Yeah. It's a tiring process, but maybe one day. I suspect the offer will never happen again. But you know what? It was an experience, and I'm very privileged to have been that person to be able to do it. But someone else's book will come out soon, and it's good. We need more and more on the market. We definitely do. We need more of us talking about this.
We do. And I really understand the idea of never writing a book again, because I wrote 2 back to back. So I wrote one, and then 6 months later, I wrote the one with Blair. And
was the first one your experience, your own personal experience, wasn't it?
So it's called Bracing Heart:
A Runner's Journey of Love, Loss, and Perseverance.
Thank you, Casey.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm Kate's biggest fan, so.
Oh, I love you. That was about my experience losing running because of a heart issue. So that happened. So I had the whole experience, returned to running postpartum. And then on my son's first birthday, I almost died running because of a genetic heart disease. I'm not allowed to run anymore. I just continue to help the population, and I have an inserted defibrillator and everything. So my first book is about that. And it was really my way of working it out, like figuring out, oh my God, I have this athletic identity of being a runner, and everything I do is about running. And still, how do I reconcile that? And so I wrote that book, and then I was like, I never want to hear my own story again, because I've just read it 500 million times and rewritten it. And did this really happen to me? And then we wrote Go Ahead, Stop and Pee. And I was like, I don't want to talk about the pelvic floor. I don't want to talk about peeing. I don't want to talk about running. I don't want to talk about diastasis. I don't want to talk about anything anymore. And it was because the process of writing a book, it takes a long time. You don't realize what goes into it until you do it, how many edits there are and how many hours. And then it gets all jumbled in your brain, and then you have to put it in paper so that somebody else understands.
Yeah, it is hard, and it does burn you out, I think, a little. But is there another one in the pipeline?
Oh God. Now I feel like you're
it is. I know. We flipped it here, haven't we? We flipped it.
That's because you're used to doing the interviews on your podcast at the cervix.
Which I love, by the way. So I love play on words, puns anyway, but I'm a sucker for a reproductive anatomy pun. So at your cervix is hilarious. My other favorite one is, well, it's not really a pun, but you can use in your daily life, but it's like, how do you like your eggs? Over easy. Like over easy.
Yes, I like that. Me and Emma's you're going to hear that on a podcast at your cervix someday soon. But like, we can't even say it. I know when I go to say it, I'm like, sign off is like, it's Emma and Grainne at your cervix. Like, you have to nearly do it like
so cheesy. It's
so how did you come up with the name?
Well, I love to say that it was our idea, but it wasn't. It was actually a guy in the UK that came up with it. A guy called Rob Bevan. I think it was Rob Bevan.
I think you're right.
Yeah, he's a chiropractor in the UK, and we were brainstorming, and he just said it, and we thought, oh, hang on, you have something there. Yeah, we just went with it, and it's cheesy. It's borderline cringe to say, but it kind of works, and it is what's on the tin. We are there to serve the listener and tell them more about pelvic health. Well, that's at least our aim. But as you know, I don't know about you, but podcasting was a brilliant thing during lockdown because we could get hold of people. It turns out people actually have lives now that we're coming out of COVID, and trying to pin them down. Everyone's so busy back in clinic, which is great. And I guess predominantly we interview clinicians. We also interview real life women who have been through some exceptional stories around their pelvic health. But wow, pinning people down is so hard. It really is. And quite often we're against time zones. We're trying to set up one at the moment, which one of the experts is in Arizona, one's in Australia, and we're here. That's an interesting time zone logistical nightmare, but we'll make it happen. But it's such a great way to get the word out there about what we do. It really is. But I feel like everyone's doing it. So we have to really up our game and just keep getting better and better and better at it.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think a title like that really, though, does bring the language down and make it accessible for people, like not so taboo or, stigmatized. And so that's what I really like about it. Any little way that we can do that, I think is really helpful. And I actually have a question for all of you guys.
Same with yours. I like your title.
Oh, thank you.
I came up with it. Oh, well done. Thank you.
Oh, good for you.
I'm so glad you're taking credit for that, Casey.
Well, I'm here with these authors and people who've published journals. I need something to my name. So I'm going to take credit for the podcast title.
You've got to. I love it.
And I think it relates to all of this. And I think this is something that I know that you guys are going to provide some really good wisdom that our listeners are really going to benefit from. But something that breaks my heart is seeing either a pregnant woman or someone postpartum talk about getting their body back and maybe never getting their body back, and this fear over that. I'd be interested to see what your perspective is on this. But for me, pregnancy changes your body forever. I know Kate says postpartum is forever is one of her big taglines. And I think people have a hard time accepting that. And so I'm wondering how we can help women accept that. And what do you guys usually say to someone who feels like they'll never get their body back?
Good question. I was going to say that it's something that Emma and I are quite passionate about, changing and reframing how we think about postpartum, because there is this pressure. And I think social media, as much as it's a great thing and we highlighted the benefits of it, there's also the negative side to it and the unrealistic expectations. So that snapback sort of ideology, like women see things on social media and they're only getting one snapshot in time, and it might be someone sucking in their tummy or angling a certain way, and it puts pressure on women. And I think, as you said, your body does change and we need to be championing that a little bit and embracing it. and just getting women understanding more about it. And that's why, particularly in the guidelines, when we put them out, we're delighted that women are reading them, because it talks about the longer term changes. So like even signs of recovery in the abdominal wall or pelvic floor that's going on like 7 months plus, just so that people are starting to go, oh, okay. So like, just like pregnancy has quite a wide time frame, postpartum recovery should too. And it's changing that whole concept of the 6-week postpartum check being an automatic transition where we wake up and suddenly we're recovered. So I like your question, and I do think that it's something we really need to reframe. So yeah.
I agree with everything you said. I mean, bounce back is a myth. And if you were to join me in clinic, I often say to women, for a week, you would see that women aren't bouncing back. Of course, you see it in the media, but these photos are airbrushed a lot of the time. And I often say to women, your body has just done the most exceptionally incredible thing. Grow a baby and then give birth to a baby. And sometimes, yes, our bodies don't go back to what they were, but look at what you've just created. And you know, I think some women do need more than that voice. They need extra support. And I think as clinicians, we need to recognize that and also signpost to therapists that can help with that as well. But I also think trying to help women get back into or find exercise is a really helpful thing as well. I often see a lot of women who are perhaps further along in their postnatal journey. They want to get strong. They've suddenly realized that their little ones are heavy, all the equipment around them is heavy, and they want to get strong. And I'm really keen on promoting more of this strong mama image, as opposed to this skinny, scrawny image that probably was very abundant in the 90s. We don't need that anymore. Women want to be strong, and you know, the stronger you are and the more I think that our children see that we're exercising and loving our bodies, that's just so empowering. So I try and encourage them with that knowledge that I now have. I definitely had body images when I was younger, and I probably still do to a point, but we're amazing. You know, women are amazing, sorry, but we are. And I just think we all need to, you know, own that and support each other. Women should support each other much more than they do. And I think we're getting better at it. That's the big key, is supporting each other and telling each other that it's okay not to bounce back, and celebrate the body that you've now got, because it's blimmin' amazing.
At the gym that I work out at in Atlanta, there's this one woman who is so incredible. She's super strong. What makes her incredible is she cheers for everybody in the gym, all the other women. I think of her because she stands out because she's cheering for everybody, when we should all really be cheering for everybody. And it's the little things that really do matter, because I remember I was doing hip thrusts, and it was the most hip thrusts I've ever done, like the most and the heaviest weight I'd ever done. And I see her over there going, oh my gosh, you got this, girl. You're so awesome. And I was like, I love you. But that's what we should all be doing.
Yeah, we should. And I think the elite sporting world is showing us that as well. You know, you see these postpartum athletes returning, but they're not just returning to their sport, they're actually returning stronger. And they're getting, you know, medals. I mean, look at Alison Felix. If ever in doubt, refer to Alison Felix or Alicia Montana. Yes. These women are blimmin' amazing. They're exceptional athletes. The time and dedication to get to that level, I totally appreciate. And I appreciate you need that support as well, that network. But there is life beyond motherhood, and becoming a mum doesn't write you off. It's actually just another chapter. I think my life's been more exciting since I've become a mum. Haven't quite got the body that I used to have, but it's much more exciting. I wouldn't change that for the world.
So as many people know that I've struggled with body image and eating disorder and all these things my entire life, thankfully I'm in a really good spot right now. And one of the reasons why is because, and this ties into postpartum women, because I think we focus too much on getting the body appearance back, right? Mm-hmm. The weight, the leanness, skin looking the same way it did before. When, you know, in reality, we don't have a lot of control over that, but we do have a lot of control over its function and how it performs. And, you know, we can work on our body's performance for our entire lives. We can always make improvements no matter what age we are, how many babies we had. There's always room for improvement. There's always things to work on. And so I think, you know, looking more at function and what your body can do versus spending so much time worrying about what it looks like. Because, and this is the thing, people who are very unhealthy have 6-pack abs or are very lean, but that's not what sport is about. Sport is about what can your body do. So I think we do get really bogged down by what it looks like. And I think, postpartum women in particular can benefit from not focusing on what the body looks like at the forefront, especially in those first year or so after giving a baby or delivering a baby.
And appreciating that your body takes time to heal and all of these hormonal changes that are occurring. Gosh, I mean, I think it took my body a good few years to really feel a bit more like me. And find me a postpartum woman that would say any different. I don't think you will. I think we underestimate what our bodies go through during pregnancy and childbirth. And the more that we talk, have these conversations like this, the more normalized we're going to make that. And I think that's why things like these podcasts are really important. I feel quite warm and fuzzy inside.
I agree. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, Casey, because I think it's such an important point to make. And I think it'll resonate with so many people out there. But I'm 2 years postpartum from my 4th baby, and I would still say I'm in the 100% in the recovery process. I don't feel anywhere near. And if I was to think body image wise, I'm nowhere. If the little person at the back of my head is seeking for the pre-partum me, I'm nowhere near that. But I think probably because of the line I'm in and because of the exposure to types of education I'm kind of okay with. Sometimes I think I'm too okay with my body image. but I'm content. No, I agree with you. I'm content, and I'm like, I don't even strive for that perfection anymore. Whereas I would say after previous pregnancies, I probably did have more focus on wanting to get back, as you said, even get back into my clothes. Like, what does that even mean? Get back into my clothes that I used to wear. I'm like, I'll just buy new ones. Do you know what
I mean? Yes.
All right, ladies. So I know that we can continue talking for a really long time, but shortly you're probably going to have to get your kids, and we're just starting work for the day. But we do have at the end of the podcast 3 questions we like to ask everybody. So I'm going to ask the one question, and I'll have Emma answer first, and then I'll have Grainne answer second, and then we'll go through those. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Brilliant.
All right. So our first question to end the day is, what is the thing that you regularly do to take care of yourself?
I need to do more self-care. Actually, boringly, I every day make sure I exercise, and that might just be a walk, but I have some me time for an hour, and I won't sacrifice that for anything.
Well, this is funny because this is something I've probably got into a pattern of going through the motions and having too many plates to spin, that you can easily sacrifice self-care. And in the last year, we just got another piece of a wee bit of forest land a wee small piece of forest land came up for sale beside our house. And one, we didn't want anyone else to buy it in case they did something to it that would expose our house. But we bought it, and I'm building a nature trail around it. So my self-care is that I am loving going out and getting knee deep in muck while I'm digging a trail and doing things. That's my zone out. It's so far-fetched from everything else I'm doing. But it's also, I'm like forest bathing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just walking through the forest is nature. There's something healing about it.
Yeah, there's actually
a fairy.
I know, she's a fairy. A woodland fairy.
Oh. That sounds amazing. So second question is, what is bringing you joy right now?
Other than talking to you guys, of course. Do you know what? My favorite time of the day at the moment is actually walking my children to school and listening to their bonkers conversations and crazy questions that they're asking me. The most recent question I will leave you with is, my daughter wants to know how we can't see this gap between our eyes. She figures we should just be able to see this dark tunnel in between our eyes. So if anyone has any answers, please write them on a postcard and send them to me, because I'm not entirely sure that I've just made the answer up.
I love that. And I actually would share that. We've kids of a similar age, and it's absolutely getting a little bit of a snapshot into how their head is working and it's the innocence, I think. And I like, that's very grounding to me, because sometimes you can get caught up in the hustle and bustle in life and how busy everything is. And sometimes life isn't always nice, rosy peaches. And sometimes it's nice to just look and just go, this is what it's all about. So my nature trail and the kids and my husband.
So I walk Andy to school, and just today his little friends didn't meet us, so I got to hold his hand the whole way. And I was like, he's 7, so I don't know how much longer he's going to hold my hand, but that's a really good time of day. Okay, our last question is, what is the one thing that you love so much that you wouldn't be able to live life without? What is that one thing in your life that you just need to have?
This is so much harder than I thought. Is it really sickly if I just say cuddles with my kids? Because I tell you, I can't get enough of it at the moment. And they're 8 and 6. And so I'm getting to that nervous, please don't let this stop phase. So I'm milking it for all it's worth. That would be forever my favorite thing, that if I never had that again, I'll be really sad. So even when they're 25, I'll be making them give me cuddles.
Me too, man. You are not alone. You are not alone. He's going to be like grown up and I'm going to be like, come on over here. And his like girlfriend is going to be like, your mom is crazy.
We're going to be those crazy moms.
Right? We totally are.
I've got a love for the kids at the moment. Ask me this in an hour and I probably won't.
You'd have had a different answer.
I'm gonna answer in with that and say, yes, obviously family, kids, but particularly I'm gonna be mushy and say my husband.
Oh, no, you're going to make me look really bad now.
No, I just collectively go with it.
Damn it.
Well, see, I was going to say coffee, so you both made me look better.
Well done, us.
Brian said to me for the first time this week, we were in the airport, and he said, I think you have a caffeine addiction. And I was like, oh, really? You've known me for 18 years? Really? Just realized.
The pennies just dropped.
I like a coffee in America in a diner more than I like it anywhere else, though, to be fair. When I go to America, I love coffee.
Really?
And yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Diner coffee?
Yeah. I like when I come around and give you. I do. Are you like, that is gross? No,
I'm thinking, that's not my favorite kind, but we all have different.
Well, depends on the diner, I guess.
Maybe, and it might just be the whole, it's probably the environment. You know what I mean? It's the fact that I'm like, to me, that symbolizes I'm in America.
That scares me. I just want you to know that scares me a lot, because if you think a diner symbolizes America, oh God.
Well, Kate, it could be much worse considering some things that this country has been through.
Well, I would say that, to be honest.
But that's just what we do. Yeah, I do. I like diners and I like the coffee in America. And yeah, my husband is American. Can I just say that he grew up in America until he was 7 or 8 years old. So he grew up in New York, actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, how funny. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a blast. And I hope we get to talk again sooner than a year, because every time I talk to you, I'm just crying and laughing.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Casey doesn't quite know what to make of it at all. I can tell you think, my gosh, what has Kate got on our podcast? Let's edit everything out.
Especially the diner bit.
No, that is staying. That's quality content right there.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that it resonated with you and that you learned something. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps increase our visibility within the platform so that more awesome people like you can find us.
If you'd like to support us further, pretty please, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/morethanmiles. That's www.patreon.com/morethanmiles. Or for a few dollars, you can help the show grow and keep going, as well as receive exclusive perks like monthly Q&As with us. Until next time, remember to run the mile you're in, and that training is so much more than miles.